can see lots of people joining the room, which is great. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us today and for giving up your valuable time for this session. Snappy Sounds, and we'll be looking at a refresher and what's new with Snappy Sounds today. Lots of people saying good morning already. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody, wherever you are in the world. Today we're joined by the lovely Gill Budgell. Gill is a synthetic phonics expert, a teacher, researcher and author, and she'll be running this session today. So thank you very much, Gill, for running this session. Do use the chat box throughout the session. I can see everyone doing that already, which is amazing. Let us know where you're from, let us know what time it is. Just engage yourself with the session as much as you like to. And we love to see people putting messages in. Someone said namaste. So today's session will run for an hour. After the session, you'll be sent the recording, the slides, and a certificate. So do check your inboxes after the session for all of those. And if you can't find them, just get in touch with us and we'll share those with you. And they'll also be available on our social media channels. So do keep an eye out for those. And without further ado, I will hand over to Gill. Enjoy the session, everybody.
Thank you very much. Welcome, everybody. I'm hoping I have some friends who may have joined me before on previous sessions. I'm loving looking at where you're all from. I can see Jamaica and India, lots of people from India, and oh, Uruguay, wonderful, Montevideo, I've been there. Lots of people, Argentina, you're all very welcome. Bahrain, yes, all sorts of horrible times for people. Sorry if it's 7 o'clock for you. It's lunchtime here in the UK. I am based here in the UK at the moment. So we have an hour, and as you can see, this is the first of 3 Language Lab webinars. I'm delighted to be starting this little triplet of sessions. And this one is called Snappy Sounds Refresher and What's New. So perhaps some of you already know a little bit about Snappy Sounds. I'm hoping you do. But actually, I'm going to take it the other way around from the title. I'm going to say what's new and then go back over some of the important points about Snappy, especially for those of you who aren't so familiar with it. But please do use the chat box. I'll try to keep an eye open there. People are still pouring in, which is wonderful. I'll try to keep an eye there in case you have questions. And I'll also try, I know we always say this, and then there is often no time at the end, but I will try to make sure we have time at the end. So let's get started. People are still coming in. If you can't hear the voice, I think someone probably from Macmillan will try and help you with that. Obviously check your microphone, but that's probably a really annoying thing to say. Okay, so Snappy Sounds, what is it and what's new? And what do you already know? Oh gosh, someone from Russia, welcome. That's lovely. Can you put in the box for me anything you already know about Snappy Sounds, or just say nothing if you don't know anything, just so I can gauge some of you. What do you know already about Snappy Sounds? Nothing. Okay. Okay. Lots of people know nothing. New to it. Okay. Okay. Does anybody know Snappy Sounds at all? Nothing, no hearing. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Somebody has said phonics. That's a good start. Let's start with that. Okay, thank you very much for answering that question for me. Okay, well, Snappy Sounds, you will know by the end of the session what it is. It's a systematic synthetic phonics program, and it has both print materials and online. Oh, wonderful. Svetlana has given a lovely answer. And it provides you with everything you need for the first 2 years of schooling to teach children how to understand and use the alphabetic code. in English, which is a difficult alphabetic code. So that's what it is. And what I want to do today is to just update you, because it's actually been around for a little while now, but there are some new and exciting things to tell you about. So let's get moving with what's new. And if you don't know it, over the course of the hour, I hope to tell you a bit more about it. So the first thing that's new, which may be of interest to you, although it's not necessarily relevant for your country, is that in England, the Department for Education had a process to give an accreditation for phonics programs. And this has been about a year now, perhaps a little bit longer. And what they did was they listed 16 different criteria. And in order to win the accreditation, you had to meet the 16 criteria. Now, I could spend an hour just telling you what those criteria are, which would be really boring. So I thought what I'd do is mention it. And then as we go through the materials, I can say to you, these are some of the important things listed in the criteria. But you'll be very pleased to hear, and we are delighted to tell you, that Macmillan's Snappy Sounds won the accreditation. So it now appears as a validated programme. And that's only important for you because it gives you peace of mind that this is a programme that meets very high standards and gives you confidence if you do go on to buy it or use it, that actually it has everything that you need, from assessment to reading books to classroom practice and activities. So that's something that's new and very important. If you want to know more about those criteria, we can provide you with a link. But if you Google the DFE, Department for Education, phonics accreditation, you will be able to see what those criteria are if you're interested. Okay, what else is new? Well, since publishing the programme, it was originally published in Australia, but since publishing the programme and since winning the accreditation, we've added 40 new decodable reading books. Now, everybody loves to know about the reading books because they're beautiful. Sometimes they are fiction and sometimes they're non-fiction. I hope that light isn't making that difficult for you to see those. But we have 40 more. So across the levels of Snappy Sounds, we've got 10 extra books at each of the levels 1 to 4. So lots and lots of books. Once children understand how the letters and sounds work in the English alphabet, then they can get on to reading the books independently. That's the goal, that we want children to read independently. So more about the books later. What else is new? We have a much easier online platform for you. So some of the materials are print, just like I showed you the books, but you can also access the books and more online. So if you are in a country that wants to use online digital resources, the platform is now more accessible than it was. You know these things, we have a few hitches to start with. This is now easier for you to access, and there are plenty of resources up there for you to use. And finally, what's new? We have some lovely case study schools in Australia. And this was one of the criteria that, one of the requirements for the accreditation for the Department for Education. We had to show that schools were using the programme and using it successfully. Even though it's new, some of the programmes with accreditation are very old now. You know, some of you know things like Jolly Phonics or Letterland. So they have also won accreditation, but obviously they've been around a long time. So they've got hundreds of user schools and they've had to shift their programme to meet the criteria. Whereas ours has really been developed in line with the criteria. And we have now we're beginning to gather some very useful case study schools. And obviously, if you come on board with Snappy Sounds, we would love to be working with you to develop some case studies as well, because we want case studies all around the world. It's very helpful for you as teachers, I think, to see how other teachers are using the programme. Okay, so rather than, as I said, go through the 16 principles, I thought it'd be really useful to look at some of the core principles and features of Snappy Sounds. And let's have a look at what some of the, so I've really picked out a few. This isn't all of them by any means. This is just a few of the things that I found useful. I haven't seen whether there is anybody from Barbados online. I was thinking there might be, because we are running a pilot project in Barbados with a few schools. And if that, oh, wonderful, Donna Hurley is from Barbados. Welcome, Donna. So we are running a pilot program there, and it's, I believe, going fantastically well. And I'm looking forward to speaking again to Shamel, welcome, she's here, to Shamel and other teachers across the island very soon. And if all goes well, then I think the intention is to roll it out across Barbados and perhaps more widely in the Caribbean. Hi, Wendy, that's good to see you as well. So these are some of the things that I've picked up from working with the schools in Barbados on this pilot study, because I know that, you know, there are always questions around how it's working and whether it's working and what you can do to make it work more effectively. So one of the most important things is that this program begins and ends with assessment, because we're all teachers, we can all teach. We in our hearts know if the children are learning, but more and more we need evidence to show that we know, we can see, because we've tracked the children's progress, that the program is effective. And again, this was a big part of the accreditation process with the DFE. We had to prove that we had embedded assessment, not complicated, not that's going to take forever, but really simple and effective to use. So here you can see, I've got it's leaning over to get it for you. More about this later, but we have a dedicated assessment folder. And in Barbados, we were working to a 13-week term. And you can adapt the scope and sequence of this program to suit your needs. But as an example, in Barbados, it was 13 weeks. I left week 13 because I felt like everyone would need a break by week 13 and just get ready for the holidays. So I had a look at how the program would work for 12 weeks. And I said for weeks 1 and 2, as those children come into school, it might be really helpful to spend that time assessing where they are. Find out what the children already know. And that's what you can do with this assessment folder. It has very simple tests. And it has a teacher version which tells you what to do with these different sections of the test. And it's recognizing the sounds. It's, can children actually even already decode? Can they actually spell these, read these very simple words? Can they read these nonsense words? We'll come back to that later. And then when you've got a clear picture of what your children know already, then you can get on with the teaching. And then at the end, take 2 weeks again, find out what they know now and compare with the beginning. And this is a really, really sound start to make sure you know more than in your heart that the children are learning. There's also some help to help you to understand, well, what does it tell you when you've got the results from doing that test? How do you know that the children have got some fluency, or they're really fluent, or they really have very low understanding of how letters and sounds match? So plenty of support to help you get that core principle of begin and end with assessing in order to identify and clarify and have evidence for your progress, the children's progress. Okay, what else is really important? Well, I've talked about this a lot, and I've done this myself in different programs. Snappy Sounds worked with 2 qualified speech pathologists, and a major part, depending on where you are in the world, some languages are easier to use with English than others, but for many children learning English as an extra language, having some help to know how to pronounce the sounds is really important. And so these two teachers with over 20 years combined experience have provided, you can see here, photos of the mouth and how when you're saying a, b, sh, what the mouth, the teeth do. And children, actually, this can be very useful for you as a teacher if you're not so confident, but also it's quite fun to use with the children as well. So that's another feature. Another major feature, which was very important in the DFE criteria, was embedded training. Now, we could spend hours doing expensive online or face-to-face courses. What this program does is provide you with little free embedded mini training videos. So at any point, if you think, oh, you know, I've forgotten how to do guided reading, or I've forgotten how to teach high frequency tricky words, there's usually a little mini video that you can click on, and you'll see the summary of them in the teacher's book, but these are available online too. And they're really accessible. As I say, they don't cost you anything extra, and they're just a very teacher-friendly way to keep your practice up to speed, so that you really understand what you're doing. So do make use of the mini training videos, as well as things like this today, the webinars that we offer, which we're doing quite a lot of and we've done in the past. So yeah, please make use of those. They're excellent. There's a very clear scope and sequence within Snappy Sounds, and this again is a core principle from the DFE list of criteria, the 16 criteria. And I think many people now, even if you're not using a phonic program, you know that having a clear sequence to introduce the children to the letters is really important. So you can see here, this is for the foundation level of Snappy Sounds. Did I bring a card to show you? Yes, I have a card here, but you can see it on the screen. These are A4 and they're nicely laminated, so they're nice and strong. You can bend them and they don't crease. And on one side, we have the letter sounds with the pictures. And on the other side, we have the graphemes with no pictures, because we want the children not to be using pictures as clues. We want them to have the pictures to help them as a mnemonic, as a memory jogger for the letter sounds. But we don't want them using the pictures too much when they're reading the books. We want them reading the words. Hello, Keisha from Barbados, another person from Barbados. That's great. So having that very clear sequence to introduce the sounds is very important. For those of you who are new to Snappy or even new to phonics, why do we not introduce the letters and the sounds in alphabetical order? Can anyone tell me that? Not if you're an expert in phonics or you know about phonics, but if you're someone that's new to it, why do you think that we don't introduce the letters in alphabetic sequence? Anybody able to put that in the chat box for me? It's all gone very quiet. It can make less words with the sequences. Yes, thank you, Phyllis. Yes. Okay, Phyllis there gave me, so that they will be able to make words. Yes, excellent, thank you. It makes children, yeah, fantastic. So even those of you who are new to it are able to answer that question. We introduce the letters in an order so that the children can very quickly begin to put the letters together in order to read and spell. If we do A, B, C, D, it's actually quite a long time before you can start to use those letters to build words. And what we really want children to do is to be able to build those words really quickly. So that's why typically it's S-A-T-P-I-N, and then you can quickly make lots and lots of words with those letters. There is no one right way to do that. There is no one sequence. All the programs vary slightly, but that's the principle that you should be looking for. Okay, so that's our scope and sequence. This was the point I made about Barbados. This is what I worked out for Barbados. I suggested that weeks 1 and 2 were assessment. Then you can go into your 8 weeks of teaching. Then you can have weeks 11, 12 to repeat your assessments. And then, as I said, week 13, you collapse, because then you're going into the week before the holiday and you have all sorts of fun events with the children and parents coming in and so on. So that was how I made it work for Barbados. So I know around the world, each of you will have, some of you will have 3 terms in your school year, some of you will have 4 terms, some of you will have different lengths of weeks, but it's quite easy to jiggle this program to make it work for your requirements. That's just one example of how we did that. Another core principle is that Snappy Sounds has a very clear lesson structure that runs throughout. And so the principle is, part 1, let's have a warm up. Part 2 is I do as the teacher and we do as a class. So I'm modeling what I want the children to do. Part 3 is you do it. Hand over to the children. Let's see if they can do it. And part 4 is review. It's not specifically for phonics. It's a good lesson structure for almost anything we do with young children. And this continual assessment and feedback is a really important part of it too. And then within the lesson, it's very important that we have a clear lesson sequence. So we've got a clear scope and sequence of letters. We've got clear lesson structure and clear lesson sequence. So the children and you as the teacher know what you're doing each time. So here's one from Foundation. It's very slightly different for the next level. You get ready to learn. Let's sit comfortably. Let's do some little finger movements. Let's get ourselves in our heads and our bodies ready. Stop fidgeting, all those kind of things. Let's review some past learning to make sure we've remembered what we learned last time and to really start to embed previous learning. Let's tell you what we're going to learn this time, the lesson objective. Let's be really clear what we're learning today. Let's say the new sound. Let's hear the new sound so we can see, I don't know, let's say we can see the letter B and we can hear it, B. And we can write it, B, and we're giving the children mnemonics as to how to write it correctly. We're reading it, B-ox, box, and we're spelling it. And then we're reviewing the whole lesson, and then we're going into group work to have a go at applying what we've learnt independently, playing all sorts of games and reading our decodable readers. This is always a sticking point. How do you use phonics to teach English tricky words? Because they are typically words that occur frequently, but can also cause us problems if we want to use phonics. So there is a poster, again, it's about the size of these A4 cards that lists the tricky words per level. And I think there's a poster as well that you can put on the wall. So again, lots of lovely hands-on materials that you can use for display and to help the children to become more independent. Clearly, some of these words are decodable once we've taught the letters and sounds. Once you've done a, n, d, it's easy. It's and, a, n, d, and. But some words, I don't know, let's say once. Can you see that at level 3? Once. That's a jolly difficult word. And even using the phonics that we know, it's tricky. So there are these words that defy phonic rules and regulations, but it is the language it is. We can't make it up. We just have to work with what we've got. So the principle is always have a go with your phonics. And if that doesn't help you, then you will need to get some help with a more fluent reader, or to understand that it's an exception. It's a tricky word. Having lots of decodable reading books was another core principle for our DFE accreditation For those of you who joined a little bit later, this is an accreditation process by the UK government for the Department for Education, and Snappy Sounds has won its accreditation. So I'm just running through some of the core principles that we had to, some of the core principles we had to demonstrate that we had included in Snappy Sounds. So here you can see the 8 levels of Snappy Sounds, beautifully color-coded. And you'll notice that any resource I pick up is also color-coded. So any resources, this one's yellow, will always link back to these core colors. And that helps you to keep organized with the materials in the classroom. You can see that we have 10 books across here at each of the levels. And the last 2 books at every level are for review and consolidation. Remember, back to that core point about how do we know the children have learnt what we've been teaching? How can we prove it? Well, these books give you a wonderful opportunity to dip back in, because those 2 use all the new teaching in the previous 8 books. And now, if you were here right from the beginning, you heard me say there are now more new books. There are 40 new books, 10 at each of the first 4 levels extra. And this chart doesn't show that, but I'm sure there'll be a new chart soon. So lots and lots of beautiful books. And also beautiful books, these are some of the new ones, I believe, available as ebooks online. Now, these books are decodable. I am going to read you a story shortly so you can have a look inside, but you can see that these are very clearly leveled. So we have the pet rat, jam, fun, zap, mud, a nap in a bag, quite simple. And then at level 2, huff, puff, rough, rough, the best deck, Gran and the tram, right up to, let's say level 5, where we have a non-fiction photographic book called Beans with very much more information inside. So super books available as print and as e-readers if you have the technology. They're really outstanding. And in fact, I think people have said from the pilot studies in Barbados, they really like the books. They're genuinely inclusive and contemporary. And as I said, some of the older programs I know have struggled a little bit with that. Here's an example from a level 2 book, Sand Block Splat. Dad packs sand into blocks. His hands pat the blocks. Jess helps fix the tops of the blocks, and Jess grips and lifts the blocks. Stick flags on the blocks. Joe is asking, in what way are they inclusive? Yeah, I will show you. Actually, here's a good example on screen. They're very much ethnically mixed. They're photographic, they're illustrated. They try and choose topics that aren't very Eurocentric. We're very mindful of being respectful about what parts of the body we might show. We try and include children who might be in a wheelchair or wearing glasses. You know, inclusivity is a huge issue these days, and we're trying, you can't please everybody, of course, but we have really tried to be very contemporary in those ways. I just wanted to show you this screen here because that's obviously an ebook. So that's the standard of the ebook that you can see on screen. Now, sorry, just to switch away from the decodable readers for a moment. One of the things we had to prove for this DFE accreditation was that we had some way to support children who were struggling. So what I worked out was that at the end, if I go back, I can show you what I mean. At the end, do you remember I said the last 2 books at each level are for review and consolidation? And for each of those books, there are games and lessons and activities. And so what we did was we pulled out these books as a standalone 8-week intervention program. So if you've got a class who you need to give a little fast track to, or if you've got children who need extra support, you could use those materials from the end of each level as an 8-week intervention program. And we suggested that it would be a 20 to 30 minute lesson 4 times a week. I mean, that's ideal. I know everybody is working to different timetables. That's ideal. And you will have activity worksheets and the 2 decodable readers to include in that 8-week fast track program. So that's a lovely way to be able to use those materials, the review and assessment materials, for those that need it. And that was a really important part of our winning the accreditation. So that's kind of coming to the end of the first part, where I wanted to highlight some of the core principles that we had to prove Snappy Sounds includes. And I believe we're about halfway through, so hopefully that's about right. So I thought you'd like to see some more of the resources. I've been holding up a few things, but it's always nice to see what some of the resources are. And I wanted to show you how the resources are linked to different methodologies in the classroom, or for different purposes in the classroom. So we do have, obviously, teacher support. We have 2 very user-friendly teachers' resource books. One for the foundation level and one for year 1. So levels 1 to 4 and levels 5 to 8. And within here, you get everything you would expect to get from a teacher's book. You get all the core principles, the things I've talked about, the lesson sequence, the scope and sequence, and you get those how to pronounce the sounds photographs if you want to access them in print, which is quite handy to have. And you also get print versions of all the activities that the children can do for independent practice. If you want to know about purchasing, I'm sure the Macmillan colleagues would tell you about that at the end, but they're easily available. Remember, those activity worksheets that I've just shown you are also available online. So you can use them here and photocopy them, or you can download them and use them on the screen in the digital toolkit. Here is the digital toolkit. It's very difficult to say that, even as an English speaker, digital toolkit. You can see, for example, the flashcards are included there. So if you want to download these lovely flashcards, then you can do that online. And you could, if you have an interactive whiteboard, you can show them on the board. And that could be part of your review right at the beginning of a new lesson. You could show some of the words you know you would expect children to be able to read and decode. So it gives you lots of flexibility having both print and online. Back to the assessment file. I think I've said enough about assessment, but the assessment file I showed you at the beginning has lots of lovely laminated cards in it, so that you don't have to think about what you're going to ask the children at the beginning and end of every level. It's all there for you. And notice here, it includes the idea of a very simple dictation, even from the beginning. Dictation is a wonderful way to check that children can spell those words, because in systematic synthetic phonics, reading and spelling are just 2 sides of the same coin. And so we want to try and get the children reading, as in section 2 here on screen, and then spelling at the same time. I mean, it does take a while when they first come into school, but that's our goal. So that, don't forget the teaching, the dictations. We have resources for whole class teaching as well. So let's have a look what we've got there. We've got these fantastic teaching cards. I don't think I brought one down with me today to show you, but this is, you can see it on screen. One side, you have the grapheme and the little mnemonic, in this case, G for girl. And you can talk to the children about the grapheme, the letter name, G, and how we create it. And then you can also introduce the phoneme, the letter sound, grapheme letter shape, grapheme letter shape and phoneme letter sound. It's very important that we do the 2 together. Very cute little image there. And then on the other side of the card, you have this teaching, these teaching notes for you. So you can be showing the children the image, and you can use this as a reminder for yourself. It's quite stressful sometimes as a teacher, isn't it? Keeping track of where you are in the lesson. And these are fantastic for helping you do that. So here's the overview, the lesson structure. Gosh, they're quite small. Say the letter, hear the letter sound, write it. Remember that review, that sort of whole process of the lesson. Can't see that now. Read it, spell it, review the lesson, and then off you go for your independent practice. And down the side, you can see there are some pre-prepared decodable word lists. So if you want to use those with the children, you don't have to be thinking of them yourself. They're provided for you. And some nice extension opportunities. If you've got some really fast learners who are doing really well, you can challenge them by using some of these extension ideas as well. Okay, moving on. Guess what? Those teaching cards are also available online now with this new online platform that's more accessible. So if you wanted to show the children the card on the screen, if you were working with digital resources, then you can, and you can still have the print here for yourself if that's what suits you better. So I just wanted to tell you that that's the case. Now, this was something that I worked out for Barbados for their pilot, for the pilot schools. Monday, Tuesday, because I thought, what does a week look like, really? If you're the classroom teacher, it's quite overwhelming. So I had to think, okay, let's imagine we're at level 1 and we're week 5. So we've done all our assessments and we've got started using materials. Thank you, Florencia. She says, nice to hear you talking about this. That's great. So what does Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday look like? So I did this as an example, but it's just an example, and you may think differently. You might want to structure your week quite differently. But basically, Monday, if you have a look at this, here we are. We're going to begin with a revision. We'll use the teaching cards, the ones I've just shown you, and you can use flashcards. Remember the little flashcards that I showed you. Use those to check if the children have remembered some of the past learning. Introduce your new learning objective, LO, learning objective. Oh, yeah, Rhea just asked what's LO, learning objective. Make that explicit to the children. So this week, on this day, on the Monday, we're going to do E, as in egg. And maybe I'd have 3 to 5 pictures or items, including some non-examples. So I might have, I don't know, I might have a little elephant, or I might have an egg, or I might have something else beginning with air. But I also might have a plane or a picture of a dog or a cat, so that the children can begin to distinguish. I might not have anything beginning with D, actually, D, because many children get a little bit confused with D and B. So it might be as well to keep those apart. But then basically we're saying the new sound, we're hearing it, eh, we're writing it in the air, across, up, over and round. So we're doing that as in the air as skywriting. And then we're having a go at writing it. We might have a go at writing it on our hands or on our friend's back. It's quite a nice way to practice writing the letters. And writing it correctly. So you can see how the reading and the writing are in right at the beginning. And then we go on to reading. Okay, because of what we've already been taught, we should be able to read these words. G, e, t, get, m, e, n, men, and so on. Listen how we actually say the sound for each letter, for each grapheme, and then we blend it. We don't say p, egg. We say p, e, g, peg. So we want the children to know that there are these different letter sounds, and then we blend them together to read the word. Then we could try a few little sentences. Ben met a hen. Silly little sentences, but it's fantastic when children realise they can actually begin to read. And then spell. Remember again, the reading, the spelling, really, really important to have the two together. So here's some very simple words that you might be able to spell. And again, you could try a tiny, tiny dictation. Get a pet bed, Ben gets a pet, or whatever. And then at the end, you always would do a review of the lesson, which is why I've put it up there in brackets. Tuesday, you might go on to learn k, as in kit. Wednesday, you might go on to learn f, as in fan, or an electric fan. But you can see how that's the beginning of your week. So then what happens on Thursday and Friday? Okay, this is what could happen on Thursday and Friday. You say, okay, we've now had the introduction to 3 new sounds this week, k and f. That's plenty, and it's quite fast. Some, I know in Barbados and I know in other places, sometimes people struggle with the pace of this. So that's something that we're going to be talking about with the Barbados pilot schools quite soon. But also we can find out how the schools in Australia are doing with that as well. So this was my idea for Thursday, Friday. So I've assumed you have 4 groups in your classroom. You may have more. And I'm saying that on each day in your session for phonics, you will have a teacher-focused group reading, sort of guided reading group, where you as the teacher sits with a little group and you're reading that decodable reader. And notice, so it goes from group 1 to here, group 2, to here on Friday, group 3, and here on Friday, group 4. So every group gets the opportunity to sit with the teacher and read that decodable reader. And then I can hear you shout, what about the other children? What are they doing? You can see here, I've suggested that while this teacher on Thursday is working with this group, she might have another group who are writing the title on a cover template. I can show you what that looks like, but if it was this book, you can blank out the title and ask the children to write the title. So they've got a bit of writing practice. Group 3 may be using a worksheet to have a go at a matching activity. And group 4 may be independently reading a book that they've already read. So they're practicing their reading. And then halfway through that session, it changes and you move as the teacher to work with group 2, and then groups 1, 3 and 4 are doing different activities. And these activities are provided as photocopyable activities. Friday the same, just jiggling those activities. And then I haven't worked in a classroom for a long time now, but you never forget the child that says within 2 minutes, I finished. What do I do now? And so here are some ideas. It's always useful to have a few ideas to train the children. When you finish, I'm busy working with this group, reading the book. It's your turn on another day, but now I'm working with this group. If you finish, then you know you go to this table over here and you can select one of these activities. And that's really good training for these children so that they are working independently. And then at the end of the week, you may revisit the book as a whole class on screen or in print. And you may finish with a class dictation as a little check to see how well the children have done. So that's just a quick example of how I imagined if I were in the classroom, I might cope with trying to make the time to sit with the children and read the decodable readers. Now, we're running out of time, so I'm trying to keep up, but I wanted to talk to you about the group reading using the decodable books. When you're working with the books, try to keep some group reading notes. Observe the children and make notes of how they're doing and where they might be having difficulties, and you might need to go back and reteach. Here's an example of a level 5 fiction book. This one's called Mike's Bike. And I think it's a really nice example of how at the beginning, you might be, dip in dad. Obviously, the stories are fairly limited because the letters and sounds the children you've taught the children so far are just a few. But once you get higher, the stories can actually be really fun. "We are here," said Dad. "It's time to get a big bike, Mike." Mike smiled. The bike shop was very wide. It had big lines of bikes in lots of sizes. "I'll help you get the right size," said Dad. There were 5 bikes that were the right size for Mike. You can hear the I split digraph sound, but we've also got the IGH I as well. Mike smiled. "I like the lime green bike," he said. So even by level 5, we've got some really quite engaging stories for children to enjoy. And then this was a one I love to show about Sue Shoot. And this is a level 6 non-fiction, and notice photographic. I'm Sue Brew. So immediately you know the phoneme targeted here is, what is it? Can anyone tell me? Sue's shoot. Anyone? What do you think the phonic focus is of this book? Yes, Ali says ooh, ooh. Someone put S, but it could be that. But remember, S for Sue is different from sh for shoot. We would take the S and the H together as the sh sound. So this one is about the ooh sound, Sue and shoot. So I'm Sue Brew. I flew. Notice the EW ooh sound. I flew to a wildlife rescue park for a newspaper shoot. I kept my camera in my bag for the shoot. It has a zoom. I met Drew, a new vet. Drew flew to the park for the shoot too. So even though we're really hammering home the ooh sound, it's meaningful and it's engaging, and it's actually about attending a photographic shoot. So children love that one. Here are some of the new books, and I don't have them in print form, but I thought I would just show you this one, and these are some of the originals, and this one Beans, or I have actually got Fly and Soar, which is a lovely one as well. So at the beginning, remember I said things can be quite basic. On the inside front cover, you always have before reading, during reading, and after reading notes. At the beginning, you always have fast phonics to tune the children in. So you can use these very easily in your group reading. You can put them on the screen as well, remember. So you can practice the high frequency tricky words. And then you can practice some of the letter sounds that you've taught before. And then you can try reading some of the snappy words, including some of the sounds you've read before. And then the story starts. So you've always got that support within the decodable reader to help you. So I don't know if you can see, Dad got on. So Dad and the children are in a swimming pool. And we've been very respectful of the fact that we all go swimming, but we don't always wear bikinis. So you can see that the children are suitably covered and not protected from the sun because it's a swimming pool, not the sea. But you get the idea. So Dad got on. I did not. I did not. He's feeling a little bit nervous. So he stood at the side of the pool. Dad got to the top. I did not. Here he is, still feeling a bit nervous. Looking a bit sad because he wants to join in. But then things change. I got to the dog. There's like an inflatable animal here. And I got on. I got to the top. Hooray. Actually, here's a sweet little thing. Tag. These children are playing a game of tag in the water. You may call it something different. And then Dad says, dip in, Dan. Dad's really pleased with Dan because he's got in the water now. And Dan says, dip in, Dad. And then the final page, Dad and I got in. And they're having a great fun together. Great fun together in the swimming pool. So a really simple story. Lots of stories like that really appeal to children. Many children have those kind of experiences. And then right at the back, so we're not leaving you high and dry at the end, we have how to talk about the story together, some little questions, some of the snappy words to practice again, because we can't ever go through enough of reading and practicing. And a little note about fluency saying, can the student read the stories again? And can they read the story better? Can they improve now that you've read it with them and you've discussed it with them? So I better move on rather than do a more difficult book. But I just wanted to show you that even at the lower levels, it's really very important. Okay. Finally, we also provide some independent practice and apply activities. And these are, I think some people are having some connection problems, and I'm so sorry, but I hope they'll be able to access it afterwards. Remember, I showed you that some of these activity worksheets are included in the teacher's book at the end, but they're also available online. And here's some examples. Remember my week example of Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then Thursday and Friday. These are some of the activities that I was suggesting children could do independently while you're working with the reading group. So here's a sorting activity. Which words have the E sound and which words have the A sound? Sound out as you write each word in the correct column to build your own word lists. So, B, E, G, beg. I'm going to write it here. B, E, G. H, A, T, hat. Oh, I need to put that one in this column. H, A, T, and so on. You would need to show children how to do this, but in theory, they should be able to, over time, we can train them to know that these activities are the same each time, but with different letter sounds. This is a matching activity. I think that one speaks for itself. You're reading the words at the top, and then you're going to match them and write them. Notice the writing again, really early on, getting children to read and write all the time, both sides. A simple activity. This was the activity that I mentioned where you could actually hide the title of a book on the book cover and create it as an activity for the children to then write with practice. And you could actually add some guidelines to help them. Make sure if you do that, it's a book that you've already read and with letters and sounds you've already taught. It's always about never expecting children to work with letters and sounds that we haven't taught before. So, better speed up. We're nearly at the end now. We've talked about the books a lot. Here's Dip in Dad that I just read to you. One of the activities could be asking children to choose a book that they've already read, that you've already worked with them in a group. And they love that quite quickly. Because remember, there are 8 books plus 2 revision books at every level. So quite quickly, they can choose a book. And sometimes they want to go back and reread and reread and reread. That's fine. That builds their confidence. And you may, depending on, again, access to digital resources, you can actually let them read print books, or you can let them read on an iPad if you have those kind of resources. These were some of the ideas that I came up with for those children that say, I finished within 2 seconds. What else can you train them to do? Well, you can play all sorts of games using the flashcards, because you've got decodable words, you have got blank cards included as well, and you've got a little card that outlines lots of different games that you can play. So here's one, for example. You could train the children to use these grapheme tiles, which are just little photocopyables of the letters. And you could set out 5 to 8 GPCs. Is everyone okay with GPCs? Grapheme letter shape, phoneme, letter sound, correspondences, how the letters and sounds work together. Children could pick a flashcard. You know, you offer them the cards, pick a card. They read the word, map, and then they place it under the correct initial, middle, or final grapheme, phoneme, correspondence tile. So there's lots of these little games that you can train the children to be able to do. Here's another one, practice word building. You could use magnetic letters if you have them, or you could use these photocopyables. You can practice letter formation, adding in a line if you think the children need that to help them with their writing. Need to finish. We talked about the dictations. So for every week, there's a dictation that you can use if you feel that's something that's useful for the children. And you can always, at the end of the week, read the book again. Read any of the books again that you've already introduced. I was going to read you another story, but we're completely out of time. So sadly, I can't read you another story. But I finished with, I think, just a few minutes to spare. So I hope you found that really interesting. There's just so much in Snappy Sounds. So really, it's always just about picking out a few ideas. And what I really wanted to show you is that these resources are so flexible. You know, as in with Barbados, I've been able to tweak it to the 13-week term. You know, whether you've got three terms in a year or 4 terms, you can make it work. So I really hope you've enjoyed it, and thank you for being engaged. I can see the whole time I've had people making comments, so fantastic.
Thank you very much, Jill. That was brilliant. Lots of fantastic feedback coming into the chat, which is really nice to see. Yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Lots of lovely feedback. I love to see it. Lots of questions about the recording and the slides and the certificate. Everyone will receive all of that straight after the session. So just check your inboxes and you'll all be sent that. And they'll also be available on our social media channels. So yes, thank you so much, everyone, and love to see all the interest in Snappy Sounds. If you've got any questions or anything like that, please do get in touch with us. Our contact details are at the end of the presentation, and you can get in touch on our social media channels. So please do get in touch. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you very much, Jill, and thank you everyone for joining. Have a good afternoon, morning, evening, wherever you are, and hopefully we'll see you all very soon. Thanks, Jill.
Thank you all. Thanks very much. See you soon.